Welcome to Titans of Terror, where we look at the men and women who have shaped the horror landscape. Today's subject, Barbara Steele. Barbara Steele was born on December 29th, 1937, in Birkenhead, Cheshire, England. Britain's first lady of horror isn't your typical horror diva. She studied to become a painter at the Chelsea Art School, where she spent the summer at the Citizens Theatre in Glasgow, painting sets for a production of Bell Book and Candle. An actress fell sick, and Barbara was chosen to take her place and was promptly talent spotted by the Rank organization. She made her feature film debut in the 1958 British comedy Bachelor of Hearts, about a German exchange student navigating English customs and young love. A few more bit parts followed until the Rank organization sold her contract to 20th Century Fox. Barbara was cast opposite Elvis Presley in the western Flaming Star, but she had a falling out with director Don Siegel, leading to her being replaced by Barbara Eden. In March 1960, there was a Screen Actors Guild strike, so she traveled to Italy, where she wound up casted in perhaps her most famous role. There are two accounts describing how Barbara came to be cast in Mario Bava's Black Sunday. One suggests that Bava selected her from photos while perusing through headshots of British actors under contract at Fox. Barbara, however, recalled that Bava tracked her down after being captivated by photos of her in a Life magazine photo shoot. The film is about a vengeful witch and her fiendish servant returning from the grave and beginning a bloody campaign to possess the body of the witch's beautiful look-alike descendants. In its day, the film was considered to be unnecessarily gruesome and was banned in the UK until 1968. Even then, it was heavily cut. The full uncut version wasn't released in Britain until 1992 on the UK Redemption video label. Barbara had a terrible time on set and thus became difficult to work with. She became frustrated with many of the choices for her character and felt out of place in the fact that she could not speak Italian. While the film received mixed reviews upon release, the film is now looked at as a horror classic. The next year, Barbara appeared in the Roger Corman-directed The Pit and the Pendulum, starring Vincent Price. The story is about a young Englishman who visits a foreboding castle in 16th century Spain to investigate his sister's mysterious death. The film would be the most financially successful of all the AIP Poe films. Next up, Barbara started work on Federico Fellini's Eight and a Half, an avant-garde surrealist comedy drama with a metafictional narrative centering on a famous Italian film director who suffers from stifled creativity as he attempts to direct an epic science fiction film. During the extensive shooting schedule of the film, Barbara took 10 days off of the set to shoot an Italian horror film entitled The Horrible Dr. Hitchcock. The story takes place in 1897 London, where a woman weds a necrophiliac doctor whose first wife died under mysterious circumstances, and who might be returning from the grave to torment her. The film was offered to AIP for American distribution, but was turned down due to needing extensive cuts for a general audience. Sigma 3 Corporation picked it up and re-edited the film, making it a jumbled mess. The film was successful enough in Italy to get a pseudo-sequel in The Ghost, aka The Spectre. This time, Barbara's character and her handsome lover-murderer, Dr. Hitchcock, and his ghost seemingly returns to settle the score, driving the two of them to paranoia, madness, and murder. In 1964, Barbara continued her Italian Gothic horror phase with The Long Hair of Death, directed by Antonio Margheriti. In the film, Barbara plays dual roles as a woman under suspicion of witchcraft being burned alive, then as a mysterious stranger who looks an awful lot like the witch. Next up, Barbara appeared in the comedy anthology I, Maniaci, directed by horror legend Lucio Fulci. Barbara appears in the segment called The Hobby, in which two best friends team up to find where one's husband is going to every weekend. After finally finishing her work on Eight and a Half, Barbara was approached to appear in Castle of Blood, aka Danza Macabra, by assistant director Ruggero Deodato. The film reteamed her with director Antonio Margheriti and was shot television style in 15 days. The film is about a journalist taking a bet to spend the night in a haunted castle on All Souls' Eve. Ghosts of the murdered inhabitants appear to him throughout the night. Barbara plays a ghost who attempts to help the journalist escape. In 1965, Barbara took on yet another dual role in Italian horror film Nightmare Castle. A woman and her lover return from the grave to seek vengeance after being tortured and killed by her sadistic husband. Barbara also plays the woman's mousy sister, complete with blonde wig. While the film's plot is often derided, Barbara's performance is celebrated. Next up, Barbara took on Terror Creatures from the Grave. An attorney arrives at a castle to settle the estate of its recently deceased owner. Soon, townspeople begin to die in gruesome, violent ways when the dead lord and plague victims return to exact revenge. Barbara plays the widow of the deceased owner. In a radio interview, director Massimo Popillo said that Barbara was difficult to work with for the first few days, acting like horror films were beneath her. He chewed her out one day in front of the cast and crew. After that, he said she was wonderful to work with. So Barbara was quite unhappy that she kept being relegated to working in horror films. Her next horror film was The She-Beast in 1967, also known as Revenge of the Blood Beast. The film is about a witch returning 200 years later to get revenge on the townspeople that killed her. In 1966, Barbara appeared as a prostitute in the German drama Young Torless, which follows a group of boys at an Austrian military academy at the beginning of the 20th century. The same year, Barbara got up to her old tricks again by playing yet another dual role in An Angel for Satan, her last Italian Gothic horror. This one was about an ancient statue being recovered from a lake and the strange effect it has on the Count's niece. In 1968, Barbara returned with an English horror film called Curse of the Crimson Altar, aka The Crimson Cult. The film also stars horror legends Christopher Lee and Boris Karloff in his final British film appearance. The film is about a man searching for his missing brother and learning of the legend of the Dark Witch in the area. Christopher Lee regarded this film as one of the worst in his career. In 1969, Barbara married American screenwriter James Poe. They later divorced in 1978. In 1972, Barbara appeared on the television series Night Gallery in an episode entitled The Sins of the Father, as the widow of a deceased man. 2 years later, she appeared in the Women in Prison film Caged Heat, playing the repressive prison warden. 1975 brought Barbara a supporting role in The Shivers, a parasitic body horror film directed by David Cronenberg. The film was ravaged by critics, yet became one of the highest-grossing English-language Canadian films of all time. In 1977, Barbara took a supporting role in the controversial film Pretty Baby from director Louis Malle. It is about a 12-year-old girl being raised in a brothel in Storyville, the red light district of New Orleans, by her prostitute mother. The film caused significant controversy due to its depiction of child sexual exploitation and the on-screen nudity of Brooke Shields, who was only 11 years old at the time. Next up, Barbara played a scientist in the 1978 film Piranha, directed by Joe Dante. It tells the story of a river being infested by lethal genetically altered piranha, threatening the lives of the local inhabitants and the visitors to a nearby summer resort. The film spawned a successful franchise. In 1979, Barbara appeared in the American slasher film Silent Scream, about a killer on the loose at a hilltop boarding house. Barbara plays the owner's lobotomized homicidal daughter. It went on to become one of the most financially successful independent horror films of the 70s, grossing $7.9 million at the box office. The 1980s saw Barbara take an extended break from acting, only appearing in a pair of TV miniseries, 1983's The Winds of War and 1988's War and Remembrance, which won Barbara an Emmy Award for Outstanding Drama/Comedy Special with executive producer Dan Curtis. In 1991, Barbara took on the role of Dr. Julia Hoffman in the 1991 revival of Dark Shadows. Dr. Hoffman attempts to cure the lead character's vampirism through medicine. The show struggled to keep its audience in large part due to the Gulf War, which frequently interrupted or moved the show. In 2012, Barbara finally returned to the big screen and starred in The Butterfly Room. In the film, Barbara plays a reclusive, butterfly-obsessed elderly lady who develops a disturbing relationship with a mysterious young girl. The movie has been criticized for its campiness. 2014 brought Barbara's final on-screen performance in Lost River. The film concerns a single mother being swept into a dark underworld, while her teenage son discovers a road that leads him to a secret underwater town. Barbara took over the role of Grandma after Karen Black passed away. Barbara would continue to do voiceover work over the last few years, including a stint on the Netflix animated series Castlevania. Often referred to as Queen of all Scream Queens, Barbara Steele has an extraordinary ability to convey utter rage and malice one moment, and then the sweetest, kindest angel the next. The Bat salutes Barbara Steele, a true titan of terror.